Hello and welcome to today's clinical training over documenting a visit. Today we'll be covering how to input the patient's vitals, the review of systems, history of present illness, and fill out any of the exam templates that may be relating to their visit. As we learned in our previous training, we know how to now prep a chart and view the timeline here on the patient summary screen. So now that we've noticed that this patient is checked in and is ready to be seen for the day and roomed, we'll be able to open that patient's chart and initially see some of this important details that we've talked about previously. The first thing you're more than likely going to do is enter that patient's vitals. So over here in chart tabs on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see the vitals. So we're going to select that chart tab, and once this template loads here, we'll be able to input any of this information that you would normally do in your current system. Once we have the measures that we would need for that day, we just save at the top, and we'll notice our check mark here. You'll also be able to go back and reference this vital information on the patient's timeline as well. Moving on from vitals, we notice that the next chart tab here on the right-hand side is allergies. But during our chart prep, you more than likely reviewed these things already. But if you needed to make any changes or additions, you'd be able to do that now as well. Following allergies, we have the ROS, which is our review of systems. Go ahead and select the chart tab ROS. We'll go ahead and load our review of systems template. Now, once we have our values loaded here on this, we'll be able to see all of the positive and negative values that you would see in many of these systems here. Your template may look different in your database, but they will all work similarly to where they will have defaults here at the top that you could easily load all of the default values at once. Now, once you verify all the information is up to date and correct, you would save just like any other chart tab. The other important thing to know about this chart tab is the history section. If we would go in, we would be able to see any of the past templates filled out in the review systems here as well. But since this patient is a new patient, they won't have any history here. They'll just be that saved value that you just completed. Moving on from the ROS, over here on the right side, we see history. But once again, that's something we've already covered in chart prep. We wouldn't need to look at this again unless we need to make any additions or changes. Next thing on the list here is the HPI, or history of present illness. Now, depending on your practice, you may or may not be responsible for filling out the details on this chart tab, but this works very similarly to all the other templates as well. But this information here is specifically relating to usually either a condition, a chief complaint, or the specific encounter that the problem that they're there for the encounter. Now you'll be able to go in here and kind of dive into some additional details and fill out the applicable fields if you are responsible for this chart tab. Once you do so, you would just save and move on to the next chart tab. The next chart tab we have on the list here is exams. Exams is going to be things like procedures or injections or the general physical exam that you may be completing. And if you needed to change the tab, the template other than the one you have selected currently, you would simply go up here to the top and select it from the drop-down. Once you complete your exam chart tab, save it off just like any other thing and move on. Now, what you might notice here is you probably would be done with the patient at this point and they're ready to see the provider if you are not doing a nurse visit for that day. So at this point in time, you'd be able to go over here to the patient's chart, over here in the office schedule. You could click this little gender sign here. This will be able to change the room status and the assignment. So in this case, let's say we were in Carol's room and the status of this is ready for provider. Once we do this and select save, the provider would be able to see this on their office schedule as well, or you may see it by if you had the display room status selected. Now, once we refresh the schedule, we would be able to see that they are in Carol's room and they are ready for the provider. That concludes today's training. Thank you for your time.